Today marks 30 years for my wife Yvonne and I being together, and today is also our 10th wedding anniversary. So I thought I would tell you a little bit of a story as to how it all started and how ultimately a group of friends ended up on the roof of a hotel watching the two of us get married in Mexico, Cancun. So to give you an idea where all of this started, Yvonne and I started dating in 1995. We met just before her 18th birthday, which is on the 15th of October. And so as we started to get to know each other, I took Yvonne on a date to a nightclub in Scotland called the Metro, which is situated in Saltcoats in Ayrshire. And on that date, funnily enough, we met a very good friend, somebody who would go on to be a lifelong friend of ours, and would also have us in a band together where Yvonne, myself and two friends would form a group called Nitrovision that we would perform. But for Yvonne and I specifically, that would be the start of our relationship over till now, 30 years long. After dating for some years, we decided that we would buy a house together, and we bought our very first flat in East Kilbride in March of 1998. I've showed in other videos as we've gone back to look at that apartment and what it now looks like and the fond memories that it's brought back for us. And that was also the same location that we got engaged in. When the time came, I had plucked up enough courage, spoken to my dad, and had bought a ring, and we got engaged in October 1998. Now, to jump forward a little bit, we stayed engaged for 17 years. And if I was to tell you why that was the case, I would say for Yvonne, she grew up in a household with both of her parents still together to this point. Her and her sister raised under a household which basically had a loving, caring, parental kind of structure for her. I, on the other hand, was raised by a single dad. My parents divorced when I was very young. My mother had left the house, and so all I really knew was my dad as a single man. So it wasn't really for the issues of Yvonne, it was definitely more for me. And initially having bought the flat in East Kilbride and then got engaged, to me that felt like relationship commitment. And so we remained engaged for those many years, and we eventually sold the flat in East Kilbride and we moved to Glasgow, where we lived for a number of years before we then relocated to England, where I was chasing career advancements, and in all of that, still engaged. Now, around 2013 would come the point where Yvonne would start to bring the topic a little bit more to the present, which was, are we going to get married? And I think the discussion that I can remember one night was her saying to me, I'm not going to be somebody's girlfriend for like ever, so you're going to have to make a decision on what's happening here. And I think it was at that point it kind of really sunk into my mind after all of these years together, not only owning multiple homes and being engaged, but it was probably time to just actually confirm that we should get married. And so from that point on, we started to think about when we should actually have the wedding. And 2015 seemed like the right time because that would us actually have been together at that point for 20 years. So we set plans in motion that we would get married in Cancun, Mexico, which was a favourite holiday destination for the two of us. We had been multiple times and just had such fond memories of the city, the location, the beach, the weather. Everything just felt right for us to book that trip. And so this is when Yvonne really kicked into project manager mode. She took over the running, the organisation, the structure and everything that would go on with the wedding. And I've got to say, she just absolutely nailed it from start to finish. And so we reached out to friends and family and discussed what our plans would look like. Now, this is a difficult topic to talk about because when it came time, we had organised that the wedding would be in October of 2015. And when Yvonne spoke to her family and I spoke to my dad and my family, both of them felt that the travel and the distance for their age and just their situation at the time wasn't quite right. Now, I think it's fair to say, as I sit here in Kuala Lumpur, having left the UK, sold all of our possessions, Yvonne and I can be pretty strong-minded at times. When we have an idea, we like to try and see it through, and we had always envisaged this wedding taking place in this sunny climate, being out of Scotland and just having that kind of holiday mentality and something that would live with us forever, a vision in our heads as to what we wanted to go through. And as difficult as it was for family members to not come with us, we ended up with a solid group of 10 super close friends who decided that they would come with us. And those friends paid their own way. Yvonne and I looking at the costs of weddings in the UK, weddings in Scotland versus what we could achieve, what we could just have kind of as a dream situation for the money that we had at the time, which wasn't a lot. A wedding in Cancun just felt like a dream situation, covering all of the costs for a fraction of what it would have cost in the UK, and fortunately having friends that were willing to pay their own way. So we set off to Cancun in October 2015 to get ready to get married. Now, I'll tell you this, Yvonne and I and our best man and bridesmaid and their daughter set off from Scotland, Glasgow, and the plan was to meet other friends when we got out there. And when we arrived at the hotel on the very first day, the first thing that caught me off guard was that the hotel, the wedding organiser came out to meet us and immediately took us into a room where we had to get blood taken. And this just completely like blew my mind. Like, what is happening? Why are we getting blood taken? But in Mexico, in order to go through a legal wedding, you have to have blood taken to make sure that you're not relatives in any way. So we had to go through that process, which seemed quite shocking at the time, but part and parcel of just a wedding package in Cancun. We had also had the choice of whether we would get married on the beach, but we had opted for the top floor of the hotel because we just thought the views, what that would look like would be amazing. So that was the plan. Now, we had a week in Cancun to basically settle into our time there, our holiday. We had friends fly in from Australia, from America, from Scotland and from England to take part with us. And we just had a great time around the pool, just a real kind of group holiday spirit. Almost at times forgetting that halfway through this we would be getting married. But as the days drew closer, we then had the stag and the hen night before the day of the wedding. We had a little celebration each, and then we met up in the evening and kind of just had again that group holiday spirit. And then on the big day, October 14th, 2015, we woke up in the morning, the boys in one room, the girls in another room, organising for the wedding ahead. Now, it was at this point that it's fair to say the weather was against us. Yvonne didn't know this at the time. She was in her room and the girls had closed the curtains, but there was actually a storm outside, and the staff in the hotel came to see me and said, look, if this doesn't clear up in the next hour or two, we're going to have to move the wedding inside. And my head was like fried, like this is not the plan. This is supposed to be this big outdoor on the roof setting, and now the weather is against us. And as I looked outside the window, the rain was just absolutely torrential, battering down. But about 30-45 minutes before the wedding was due to start, the sun just came out and the cloud formation just looked incredible as we looked across the sky of Cancun. And the staff pulled everything together and it was time to head upstairs and get ready. Now, I was there with my best friend, somebody that I'd worked with, met through my time at Halfords, and then just had a life of experience and friendship with my mate Craig. And the two of us were dressed in a three-piece suit on the top floor of the hotel at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Once again, the Mad Dog Englishman in the full day's sun was like in full display. And as I've explained before, I've got English heritage, so that's why I use that. I'm Scottish, but family generations that go back to England. So we're on this roof, blue suits on, absolutely sweating, and couldn't really just get on with this fast enough. But Yvonne came up with her bridesmaid who was going to give her away, and we had the ceremony, and it was hosted by a local Mayan gentleman who was there to kind of present in both the kind of Mexican structure and also what we had agreed with him. Now, Yvonne will hate me saying this, right, but you'll see in the footage here, he was an absolute Jerry Springer lookalike. I couldn't get over it the whole time. I just kept giggling. We're getting married by a Jerry Springer lookalike. Look at this dude. But it was just something that stuck in my mind. And we had given our friends some GoPros in order to try and make a video out of it. So as our friends were sitting watching the ceremony, they were also videoing little bits that I would later turn into our kind of wedding video. That was the plan. And so we had the ceremony, and then afterwards we headed down the next floor and we had a beautiful lunch, early afternoon dinner and some drinks and the speeches, and this was just something that hadn't even crossed my mind. But to stand up in front of my friends that came from all over the world and say a speech, I actually just burst into tears. I just couldn't believe the love and friendship of having people come from across the world to see Yvonne and I get married in Cancun. And of course we kept our family members close in our minds at that point. And that was the day that we got married. That was the 14th of October, 20 years in the making to get to that point. And the very next day was Yvonne's birthday. Now, I always wondered why we didn't combine the two of them, and Yvonne said to me, "Are you mental? I want to get 2 gifts out of this, not one rolled up, cheap boy. So we'll get married the day before and then it'll be my birthday the next day." And one of those guests that was with us, she very kindly, incredibly booked a boat trip for us the next day for Yvonne's birthday. Now, the party celebrations on the wedding night ran on way later than they should ever have gone on to, right? And as we woke up that next day, that next morning, with only a couple of hours sleep and a blistering hangover, we knew that we were going to go on this boat. And as we looked outside, it was again absolutely torrential, horrific rain, storms almost coming in, and we all thought, this boat's never happening, we're never getting on this, right? But we got in the minibus that took us down to the harbour, and we saw the captain, and he was dressed like something from Deadliest Catch, full rain gear on, and he was like, "Right, get on the boat." And we were like, "Is this going to be safe, mate?" And he was like, yeah, get on the boat. Obviously thinking, I can't give these guys a refund, I would rather sink this thing than hand them back this cash. So we got on this boat and we sailed out into the ocean, and it was choppy. I didn't think we'd make it at times. It was very rough, and the captain pulled the boat over, got a bottle of tequila out and started pouring it down at each of our faces to get us drunk again. And we had one of the wildest days out I think we've ever had in our lives, and it lives with us to this day. Just an insanely wild 2 days of partying in Mexico. And as our friends headed back to their respective countries the next few days later, back to Australia, back to America, and Yvonne and I back to the UK with our best man, our bridesmaid, their daughter, and we got back to reality, it was incredible. It was just something that will live with us forever. And then 1 week later, at Blytheswood Hotel in Glasgow, we had a massive traditional Scottish Glaswegian party to celebrate with our friends, Yvonne's parents, Yvonne's sister and partner, and my dad, my sister, all of our family members that could come and join us at that point. We had that party to celebrate. A mate of mine who had DJ'd for years that I loved and respected, he came and played for us. We had an 80s and a 90s section, and then we closed the night out with a full-on rave. Suits on, light sticks in the air, dance music pumping out, and that was how we finished off the celebration that kind of lasted for about 3 weeks for us. And that was kind of how we finished out the end of that 3-week period, celebrating with friends and family, celebrating with everybody that mattered in that hotel. And that's kind of how we did our celebration. And now I'm sitting here telling you this in Kuala Lumpur after a couple of days in hospital, just celebrating health, good health, spending time with my wife, spending time together, reminiscing over all of that, and I thought I would just tell you some of that as a story. So thanks for listening to all of that. I hope that's given you a little bit of insight into Yvonne and I. Do you want to come and say hello?
Hello. Thank you so much for all the lovely comments in the last video. It means a lot, so really appreciate it, but thanks for all the love.
Alright, now let me just quickly say a few thanks to some people, alright? People that have sent donations in the last few days. I just want to say thank you to 711 Selvan, to Skankbiz, to Aishala Berg, I think, to MS Pleased Duration. I'll put the names here, these are a nightmare to read. To Tam Mac 3219, thank you so much, they're all YouTube donations. Thank you to Sean for the Ko-Fi donation. Thank you so much to my brother in music, Yanis, whose son is also getting married in just a couple of days' time in the 18th in Cyprus. Everybody's can't believe it, since seeing him as a little boy all those years, now getting married. So best of luck, best of wishes and best of love from us. And to new members here on the YouTube page, to Leon, Gally, and also to Joe and Hannah, thank you so much for joining my page. Thank you for being sponsors here. If you're interested in signing up, you can do that below. But thank you everybody that's watched these videos over the last couple of days. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.